guys, what is up? My name's Kaylee. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a video because my girl Lacey over at Lacey D. Bell did a video just like this, and that is contemporary book recommendations in preparation for the contemporaryathon round. I don't even know what round it is, but it is the second round this year. It is coming up. One of the prompts is to read a book that another person, booktuber, bookstagrammer, book blogger has recommended and then give them credit. So I figured I'll go ahead and list some of my favorite books that are contemporary and see if they help you pick any for your TBR. I have it broken down into 3 categories: adult contemporary, YA contemporary, and manga and graphic novels. Let's get into it. So we're gonna start with adult contemporaries. Some of these will be completely unsurprising and you've probably heard of them before, and others are a little bit older, so hopefully it's something new on your radar. So let's see what I have. First up is Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff. This was my favorite book the year I read it, which I think was 2016. It is a story told in 2 parts about a marriage, and you get to see the perspective both of the couple when they fall in love and how the marriage plays out, as well as kind of a pulled back perspective from the outside of watching these 2 people who seem like they are sickeningly in love. It is gripping and very raw, I'd say, but it's both happy and sad. I don't know, there's just everything that you can want in a contemporary literary fiction story. I remember it being in here. I think I'm due for a reread. It's been a while, but I love this book. Next up, a book that has become a movie, and I think the movie was almost just as good as the book, which is so rare to happen, and that is This Is Where I Leave You by Jonathan Tropper. This is a story about 4 siblings whose father dies. They're all adults, so they have to go back home to their mother's house and sit Shiva for the post-death, as that is, they're Jewish and that's part of what they have to do. So that lasts for 7 days and 7 nights, and every single sibling has their own thing going on in their lives that the others don't really know about. And now they're forced to be together for the first time in many years, and they all have to kind of come to terms with the things they're struggling with and get help with each other. And if you're the kind of person that loves books and stories about family, this is a really, really good one. It's humorous, and the topics it covers span from trying to have a baby and not being able to affairs, to old childhood things that happened that no one knew about. Like, it really hits a lot of topics. I really enjoyed this book. Another one that I should reread soon because it's been a few years, but the movie also was funny and starred people like Adam Driver and I believe Jason Bateman and Tina Fey and the guy from that political show that was on Netflix, whose name I can't remember, but yeah, it's a good one. Also wouldn't be contemporaryathon if The Hating Game by Sally Thorne didn't come up, an enemies to lovers romance story. Some people find that there's some problematic elements in it, especially with Josh and how he treats the main character, Lucy, but I don't know, it's one of my favorite contemporary romances, and you've probably heard of it, so still a favorite. And while this book specifically isn't necessarily contemporary, I know that the people that are hosting this allow a little bit of stretching into magical realism and historical as long as it reads contemporary, and that is Taylor Jenkins Reid. Really any of them. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is the only one that I physically own. I will be reading one of her backlist titles. I just read One True Loves and absolutely loved it, 5-starred it, so I really recommend anything by Taylor Jenkins Reid. They're fast reads and you get really invested in the characters, so if you love character-driven stories, this is the author for you. This one teeters on the edge of magical realism, but it is considered a contemporary. The author himself has had some problematic things come out in the recent past, but I still think it doesn't diminish the book itself, and that is The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. This is about a Dominican boy who wants to be the next Tolkien, and it's about him kind of dealing with life as he's growing up in college and finding himself, but also his past and his life in the Dominican Republic. And it's a pretty fucked up story, but the character himself is just someone that like you can't help but root for and care for. And if you're looking for something that's hard-hitting and diverse, this is a good one. As for books that I do not own, but I would recommend highly, I doubt you've been on BookTube without hearing about Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This year, it came out in the spring and everybody dove in and loved it. I've seen it all across BookTube. It is a male-male romance about the president's son, President of the United States' son, and the Prince of Wales. It is enemies to lovers. It is funny. It is a quick read, and you can't put it down once you start it if you're into it. So I highly recommend that one. And secondarily, another book that I don't own, but I read for a contemporaryathon, I think last fall, and that is Young Jane Young by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a story about one event that happens to one woman and how it affects other women in her life and other generations. So herself, her daughter, her mother, a woman that is indirectly involved, and you get their stories and their perspectives about the situation. It's pretty harrowing and it's a little bit, I would call it feminist, but I also think that it's more of an idea, a study in how women can be affected completely different in a situation than a man is and held accountable in a very different way. It blew me away. I did not expect to love it the way I loved it, but once I started it, I couldn't put it down, so I had to put it on this list. So that's it for the adult contemporaries, and now we're moving into the YA contemporaries. My shelf's just gonna get emptier and emptier back there. First and foremost, The Serpent King by Jeff Sentner. This is a story about 3 college-age kids that are very unlikely friends. One of them has like a preacher-type father, but like in the kind of severe faith where he does weird things, aka like he lets people get bit by snakes. So our main character Dill is trying to break away from that reputation. His best 2 friends are all very unlikely. One's like super into fashion and blogging, and the other is like a hardworking kid that has kind of like a rough home life. And this book is incredibly hard-hitting. I don't want to give too much else away because it's a very quick read, but it was probably one of my first YAs that really brought me into YA contemporaries. Highly recommend it. Next up, if you are wanting to continue in hard-hitting contemporaries, this book came out this year. It is Girls on the Verge by Sharon Biggs Waller. This is a story about a 15-year-old who has sex for the first time and gets pregnant, and she lives in Texas where it is illegal to have an abortion. So it is the story of her and 2 girls her age trying to help this girl obtain a legal abortion and going through all the channels and all of the hoops that you have to go through as a person seeking that procedure. It's the first book that made me cry on camera on BookTube, so if you're looking for something hard-hitting that and you can deal with that subject matter, this is I highly recommend this one. For something a little more lighthearted but also dealing with the loss of a parent, This Adventure Ends by Emma Mills. The main character in this moves to Florida from, I don't remember where, like upstate, up north, with her family, and she is dealing with trying to make new friends in a new friend group, but also helping other people grow. So it's definitely a story about growth and friendship. I ate this book up. It was both fun and important, so I highly recommend it. It's the only Emma Mills book I've ever read, so I do have another one on my TBR, but you'll have to wait for that. Next up, a book that I think is a really good one to recommend because it is short, but it does kind of waver on the edge of being historical fiction. That is The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. This is a story of multiple people that live in Alaska, and they all kind of have their own personal situations. None of them have a lot of money, and she weaves a really interesting story about these characters, and they kind of meld together in a way. It's just such a good and fascinating book. I read it a couple years ago, and I still think about it pretty regularly, so this is definitely one worth checking out. And again, it's very short, so it's perfect for a readathon. My legs hurt. Okay, so next is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. This is a story about a girl that is struggling with her anxiety, socially and otherwise. That's basically the main part of the story, is Eliza has anxiety. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She doesn't have any friends, really, in the beginning of the story. But the secret is that she is also a very popular web comic creator online, but nobody knows that that's who she is until one person moves to town, the new guy, and figures it out, and they become friends, and it's about their friendship and about her growth. And one of the things I really like about it is that like throughout the book, in the chapters, you've got little pieces of her webcomic that come up, so it breaks up the chapters really nicely. So it's both fun and like most YA contemporary that I read, a little hard-hitting. The next two books are super throwbacks, and I haven't read the next one since I was a teenager, but it was really important to me in my teen years. That is Hairstyles of the Damned by Joe Mino. When I was in high school, I was like the only person I know that dyed my hair and had piercings and got tattoos. My best friend at the time did too, but like we were it in a class, graduating class of like 1,000 people. So this book really resonated with me, so much so that the author taught at the college that I went to, and it's part of the reason that I applied to that college. So I don't know how it stands up. I really don't know much about it except that it's about a boy that falls in love with a girl that is this. So I'm pretty confident that it might end up being like Manic Pixie Dream Girl in the end, but this was published so long ago that that wasn't really like a thing then. So I don't remember, honestly, if that's how it turns out. 2004, it was a very long time ago, but it really shaped a lot of my life in my high school years, so I felt like I had to add it. And on that note, another throwback, Sloppy First by Megan McCafferty. This is a story about a girl in high school who likes to run and who's falling in love for the first time, and it's snappy and quippy and funny, but it is a product of its time, so there is a lot of stuff that I don't think the author would get away with today. There's a lot of like slut shaming and girl on girl hatred and talking shit about friends behind their backs. And I read it recently, like probably a summer or two ago, and I know that Chelsea at Chelsea Darling has read it recently too and felt the same way. If you're looking for a fun read and you can, that won't affect you, the fact that they do have those moments of girl on girl hatred, this is a really fun and good read, and I do believe it's becoming a TV series, as well as there's going to be a spin-off novel in the future, so it'd be a good time to read this. I believe there's 4 or 5 books there's at least 4 books in the series because I have 4, but I do believe they had a 5th one come out that I never read. But anyway, I really do recommend the 1st and 2nd and probably 3rd book. And the books that I don't own that I would highly recommend for YA contemporary are The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which is a story that would fit diverse. It would fit like a hard tale because it is a story about police brutality against Black people and the fallout that happens for people that are involved in the situation and trying to stand up for the truth and getting justice for what happened. It is a very great book. I couldn't put it down when I read it a few years ago when it first came out, and if you're interested in it, stop hesitating and read it, because there's a reason it's been a New York Times bestseller for like 2 years now. Next, that I don't own but was one of my favorite books of 2018 is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It's a great book for a readathon because it's told in prose, so it happens really, it's not prose, it's poetry. It's a book of poetry, but it's a novel, and it is such a fast read, but it is so good. It's about a girl that is raised with her twin brother in a very religious household, but now they're high schoolers, and she's learning that like maybe that isn't for her, and she's trying to deal with both being true to herself but also having her parents love her for who she is, and super good. And then lastly, anything by Brandy Colbert. I haven't read her most recent book that just came out this year, but Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert, or is it Colbert? I always get this wrong. Or what I read last contemporaryathon, Finding Yvonne. Both stories about young Black women. The first one, Little and Lion, has bipolar rep. It is about a bisexual Black girl who is also Jewish, and then Finding Yvonne is about a girl with a single parent dad who gets pregnant and trying to manage that situation and also not have her dad like hate her for it, you know? So those are some good diverse reads. That's my YA category suggestions. So we're gonna move on to the manga and graphic novels. The first one I recommend as a contemporary manga is Orange by Ichigo Takano. This is one of my favorite dual books in manga. It's a contemporary story about a group of friends, one of whom commits suicide and the rest are kind of dealing with the guilt of that happening. There's a little bit of fantastical elements in that the main character gets a letter from her future self explaining the things she can do to change the course of events to save him. So there's a lot of trigger warnings for suicide, suicidal ideation, guilt surrounding the death of loved ones, and my one biggest complaint about this whole story is that it centers around the survivors feeling guilty and responsible for the death of their friend, when I don't think that's right. But the rest of the book is so good, and it's about such a fun group of friends. I highly recommend it if those topics do not trigger you. Next is Princess Jellyfish by Akiko Higashimura. If you've been on my channel for like the last couple months, I talk about this series a lot. It is, next to Death Note, my newest favorite manga series. It's about a group of girls that aren't like, I hate to be they aren't typical girls, but that's the storyline, is that there's the six girls that live in a building, and they all have very specific things they like in their life. The main character is obsessed with jellyfish, another is obsessed with trains and train schedules, another is obsessed with one specific ancient war, and they don't like pretties, like girls that dress up and do makeup and wear dresses and are, you know, beautiful and stylish. They call them stylishes, I think. And they hate men. But their building is about to be sold to build up like a high-rise, expensive luxury apartment, and one guy who dresses up as a woman, so no one in the building knows that he is not a woman except the main character, has come to help save them. And it's moved a lot from that main plot line. There's a lot of things going on at this point where I am in the series, but it's fun and funny, and the characters are great, and I just love the dynamics of everyone, and I think it's a perfect contemporary, and manga and graphic novels are always great to put into a readathon because they're quick and easy. And lastly, though I don't own any of them, shockingly enough, Giant Days by John Allison? I may be making that up. Great graphic novel series, sometimes kind of fades into a little bit of magic realism, but for the most part it's a contemporary story about 3 women and 2 men that go to a university in the UK, and they're roommates and they live together and they become friends, and there's just so much intricate like things that happen between them, but they're unlikely friends, but they all make sense together, and it's a fun story. So if you just get a volume of it, it'd be perfect for a couple challenges and just knocking out an easy book for the contemporaryathon. So that's it for me. That is adult, YA, and graphic novels and manga contemporary recommendations. Let me know if any of these are books that you've read, how you think about them, what you think about them. Are there any that have sparked your interest and you think you might read for this contemporaryathon? Let me know down below. But that's it for me, guys. Like if you've liked this video, subscribe if you are new here and want to see more content from me. I post all my social media links down below. You can find me on Instagram and Goodreads and Twitter. I hope to see you in the next one, and I hope you are participating in this contemporaryathon with me and with everybody else. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.